The night my grandfather died, the world didn't just go quiet. It tilted. I was standing alone in his study, the scent of old leather and rain still clinging to the air, when I realized nothing about my life would ever be the same again. I thought grief would be the hardest part. I was wrong. The inheritance came with a price, and the people who raised me were ready to collect it. My parents smiled through their tears, already counting money that wasn't theirs. I said no. That was the moment love turned into threat, and family became my most dangerous enemy. Before I continue, tell me your country and the time right now. I never expected my grandfather to leave me anything beyond memories. That belief stayed with me as I sat in the lawyer's office, my hands folded in my lap, my back straight, my emotions carefully locked away. The room smelled like old paper and polished wood. Everything felt formal, distant, safe. I thought this meeting was about closure, not transformation. The lawyer spoke calmly, reading line after line from the will. Properties, investments, trusts, numbers that sounded impressive but unreal. I listened without reacting, my mind wandering to my grandfather's quiet laugh, the way he always watched people before he trusted them. Then the lawyer stopped. He looked directly at me. He said my name. $7 billion. He said it clearly, slowly, like it was something fragile. For a moment, I thought I had misunderstood him. My brain refused to accept the words. My chest tightened. My fingers went numb. Sole beneficiary, he added. The room went silent. Not the polite kind, the dangerous kind. I felt heat rush to my face and cold settle in my stomach at the same time. Pride flickered, then fear swallowed it whole. I didn't smile. I couldn't. The number felt too heavy, too sharp, like it came with consequences I couldn't see yet. I glanced at my parents. My mother's lips were pressed together, her eyes unreadable. My father didn't blink. His face stayed perfectly still. That silence scared me more than anger would have. The lawyer kept talking, but I barely heard him. My thoughts raced backward instead. I remembered my grandfather sitting across from me in his study, asking me questions no one else ever did. What do you want? What scares you? Who do you trust? He used to say money didn't reveal people. It exposed them. The meeting ended quickly after that. Papers were gathered. Hands were shaken. I stood up slowly, my legs unsteady, my heart pounding harder with every step toward the elevator. Inside the elevator, no one spoke. The numbers lit up as we descended, one floor at a time. I stared at the metal wall, trying to ground myself. My mother finally broke the silence. Well, she said softly, this changes everything. Her voice sounded gentle, almost loving, but something underneath it made my skin prickle. The car ride home felt longer than usual. My father gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. He didn't say a word. The city passed by in a blur outside the window. My mother turned in her seat to face me. What are you thinking of doing? She asked. Then she smiled. For the family. The word family hung in the air like a demand. I haven't decided yet, I said. My voice came out steadier than I felt. I just found out. Of course, she replied quickly. No rush. But her eyes didn't soften. They calculated. That night sleep wouldn't come. I lay in my old bedroom, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment with my grandfather. I searched for signs, for clues, for the reason behind his choice. Why me? Why not them? The answer felt buried deep, wrapped in truths no one wanted uncovered. Morning came with heavy silence. When I went downstairs, my parents were already seated at the table. Neatly stacked folders waited in front of them. Coffee cups sat untouched. We need to talk, my father said. His tone wasn't unkind. It was worse. It was controlled. My mother slid one of the folders toward me. These are just formalities, she said. Standard steps. I opened it slowly. Legal language filled the pages. Trust modifications. Temporary authority transfers. Safeguards, they called them. My chest tightened. This feels fast, I said. It's necessary, my father replied. For your own good. The words made my stomach drop. For your protection, my mother added. From what? I asked. They exchanged a look. One I recognized too well. From making mistakes, my father said. From being taken advantage of. I closed the folder. I want my own lawyer, I said. And time. The temperature in the room shifted instantly. My mother's smile disappeared. Don't be difficult, she said. I'm not being difficult, I replied. I'm being careful. My father leaned back in his chair. You wouldn't even be in this position without us, he said calmly. The implication was clear. Gratitude was expected. Obedience followed. I stood up, my legs trembling. This isn't about helping me, I said. It's about control. My mother exhaled sharply, shaking her head. You're emotional, she said. That's understandable. Her words felt rehearsed. Dismissive. I walked away before my voice could break, but something inside me already had. The rest of the day passed in fragments. Phone calls. Messages. Congratulations mixed with advice I didn't ask for. Family friends suddenly wanted meetings. Distant relatives offered guidance. By evening, my parents called me back into the dining room. Another document waited on the table. This will simplify things, my mother said. I looked down. My name was already signed. Perfectly. Carefully. Not by me. My heart slammed against my ribs. I looked up at my father. He met my gaze without hesitation. Then he slid the paper toward me. I stared at the document again. My signature, elegant, practiced, familiar, mocked me from the page. But I hadn't signed it. I knew I hadn't. My stomach twisted as I raised my eyes to my father, whose calm expression hadn't shifted. You forged my name, I whispered. He didn't flinch. We corrected a mistake, he said smoothly, folding his arms. You're young. You don't understand what to do with that kind of money. We're protecting you. Protecting me? My voice cracked. By stealing from me? My mother stepped in, brushing imaginary dust from the table. You wouldn't even have a name if it weren't for us. You think your grandfather raised you alone? We sacrificed everything, your education, your comfort. So don't speak to us like strangers. You are strangers. I stood up, my breath catching in my throat. I don't even know who you are right now. You're overreacting, my father said, unfazed. Sit down. We need to discuss this as a family. But I didn't sit. I couldn't. My legs were trembling, but I held my ground. I'm not signing anything else. And I'm calling the lawyer. You'll do no such thing, he snapped, the mask finally slipping. That night I locked my bedroom door, something I hadn't done in years. I didn't trust the silence anymore. It was too heavy, too calculated. My phone stayed under my pillow, my heart pounding with every vibration, even if it was just a spam notification. The next morning, 3 missed calls from Aunt Helen, a woman I hadn't spoken to in 5 years. Then a message from my mother. She just wants to check on you. I didn't reply. More calls came. People who were concerned. Old family friends, distant cousins, even my mother's old college roommate who suddenly remembered my birthday. Everyone had advice. Advice that sounded like instructions. You should think about your parents' position. Maybe split the money. You don't want this to become public. The pressure came softly like rain. Not enough to flood, but enough to soak through. Everywhere I turned, someone reminded me of my duty. Even my husband, Daniel, wasn't immune. They're your parents, he said one night as we lay in bed, his back to me. They raised you. Maybe just give them a portion? Something symbolic. I turned toward him, watching the shadows on the ceiling. You think I should reward them for forging my name? I didn't say that, he replied too quickly. I'm just saying, maybe it's not worth the stress. Whose stress? I asked quietly. He didn't answer. A week passed in a blur of phone calls, pressure, and manipulation disguised as love. My mother began sending photos of me as a baby, writing captions like, "Do you remember who held you when you were sick?" It wasn't love. It was a trap made of guilt. And when I refused again, firmly this time, she cried. Real tears. Shaking hands. A performance perfected over years. You're tearing this family apart, she said over the kitchen counter, mascara streaking down her face. You think this money is just yours? Everything we built, everything your grandfather earned, was for the family. I didn't respond. I couldn't. I just picked up my keys and walked out the door. That night, my father's message was clear. A letter hand-delivered. Actions have consequences. No signature. No context. Just 6 words and my heartbeat in my ears. Daniel tried to comfort me, wrapping his arms around me from behind as I stood at the sink. "You're not alone," he whispered. "You've got me." But even then, something in his tone didn't sit right. His support had edges, sharp ones. His words felt rehearsed, like a line he'd been waiting to deliver. And I began to wonder, was I sleeping beside another liar? The paranoia settled in like fog. I started checking the locks twice. I kept my phone charged at all times. I stopped talking to anyone who called from an unknown number. One night, I stayed up later than usual, pretending to be asleep as Daniel crept out of bed. I heard his footsteps fade down the hallway. I waited. Then I followed. He was in the study, the door cracked just enough for me to see the glow of his phone. His back was turned, voice low. I held my breath and listened. I don't know what else to do. She's not budging. She's suspicious now. Yeah, I know, but... He paused. Then I heard it. My name. She's smarter than we thought. Emma's not signing. Every muscle in my body locked. My name, like a warning, fell from his mouth so casually. I backed away before I could hear more. My legs were trembling, and my throat burned with silence. He was part of it. I didn't know who he was talking to, or how long he'd been involved, but I knew the truth now. And it crushed me. My husband wasn't on my side. He never was. I lay awake the rest of the night trying not to cry, trying not to let the pieces of my life collapse all at once. I needed a plan. I needed proof. I needed someone I could trust. But more than anything, I needed to get out before the people I loved destroyed me completely. I overheard my husband on a late-night call, whispering my name like a warning. I wanted to believe Daniel. I needed to. After everything else, the lies, the forged documents, the pressure from my parents, I needed one person in my life who wasn't playing a role. Someone who wasn't calculating how much I was worth. Someone who saw me, not the money. But trust doesn't erase doubt. It just delays the moment it breaks. And that moment was coming fast. The day after I overheard him whispering my name on that late-night call, he acted like nothing had happened. He smiled, kissed my forehead, poured my coffee. "Did you sleep okay?" he asked. "Like a rock." I lied, watching his hands. Calm. Too calm. I waited. If he was going to tell me something, anything, he had the perfect chance. But he didn't. So I said nothing too. Not yet. Instead, I started watching. It began with small things. Bank statements that never arrived. Notifications that were once forwarded to both our phones now seemed to only reach his. I logged into our shared account. The history was wiped clean. When I asked about it, his response came too fast. "Must be a glitch," he said, brushing it off. "I'll call the bank later." He didn't. And when I reminded him, he frowned. "Emma, you're starting to sound paranoid." I almost laughed. That word paranoid was like acid on my skin. That was what my parents had said when I questioned their lies. It was what manipulators always say when the truth gets too close. "I just want transparency," I said, trying to stay calm. "We're married," he said, stepping closer. "What's mine is yours." "But is what's mine also yours?" I asked, my eyes not blinking. His jaw tightened just for a second. I saw it. And I knew. That night, he casually mentioned the inheritance. Not with urgency, not with anger. Just casually. "So, what are we thinking about doing with the money? Investments? Property?" I pretended not to hear him. But inside something cracked open. My grandfather's words echoed in my mind. Words he spoke often but I never understood until now. Be careful with love that only shows up when there's something to gain. I used to think he was talking about other people. Strangers. Opportunists. I never thought he meant my own husband. I started documenting everything. Screenshots. Messages. Even voice memos. If I had a question and he dodged it, I'd write it down. If he said something that felt off, I'd record it on my phone later while it was still fresh. I created a folder on a separate drive, something he couldn't access. Because if he was working with my parents, I needed proof. But betrayal doesn't come as a confession. Comes in details. It leaks through locked drawers, missing receipts, subtle glances. One afternoon he got a call and walked out to the patio. I followed after a few minutes, pretending to water the plants. I heard one sentence before he turned and saw me. She's close to cracking. We just need to. Click. He hung up. Who was that? I asked, the host still running in my hand. Wrong number, he said too quickly. I looked him straight in the eyes. Was it my father? He narrowed his eyes. You really don't trust me anymore, do you? Silence sat heavy between us. No, I said finally. I don't. He stormed inside. That night he didn't come to bed. I didn't sleep either. By morning I had made a list. Everything strange. Every conversation. Every omission. I needed to see it in black and white. And then I remembered the drawer. A locked drawer in his study desk. One I'd never had reason to open. One he kept his keys for on a chain I used to think was sentimental. While he was in the shower, I took the chain. I waited until I was alone. My hands trembled as I slid the key into the lock. It clicked. Inside were papers. Some financial. Some handwritten notes. But one thick envelope caught my eye. Unmarked. Taped closed. I opened it. And there it was. A signed agreement. Between my parents. And Daniel. My stomach dropped. The date was 3 weeks before my grandfather passed away. They had discussed the inheritance. How it would be managed. How they would help Emma adjust. Legal language I couldn't fully understand. Except for one sentence. Daniel agrees to advocate on behalf of Mr. and Mrs. Stanton to ensure inheritance redistribution, when Emma becomes beneficiary. I felt sick. He signed it. My husband, the man who slept beside me, held my hand, kissed me goodnight. He'd signed a deal with my parents behind my back. I dropped the folder. Papers spilled across the floor like broken glass. There was no safe place anymore. No love untouched by agenda. No one I could trust. I backed out of the room, my breath shallow. And just as I reached the hallway, the front door opened. Daniel stepped inside. His eyes met mine. And then he looked down. At the open drawer. At the scattered documents. His expression changed in an instant. Not fear. Not guilt. Control. Like a mask slipping back into place. I can explain, he said slowly, closing the door behind him. I stood frozen. Because now I knew. He was never going to let me walk away with that money. And maybe not at all. I found a hidden agreement with my parents' signatures. And my husband's. I didn't confront Daniel that night. I couldn't. My body moved on instinct, not emotion. I waited until he fell asleep. Then I slipped out of bed and packed a small bag. Just essentials. Clothes. Documents. The envelope. My hands were steady, but my chest felt hollow. By morning, I was sitting across from a lawyer my parents didn't know existed. Her office was smaller than the one downtown. No marble floors. No gold frames. Just bookshelves packed tight and a woman who listened without interrupting. I watched her eyes as she read the documents page after page, her expression tightening with each line. This wasn't improvised, she finally said. Her voice was calm but firm. This was planned. My throat went dry. Planned how? She slid one page toward me and tapped a paragraph. They were preparing to declare you legally incompetent. The word hit me like a slap. Incompetent. I whispered. Yes, she said. Medical evaluations. Temporary guardianship. Emergency filings. She looked up at me. Your parents were building a legal cage. I felt cold all over. Not shocked. Just clear. Every strange call. Every sudden concern. Every accusation that I was emotional. It all snapped into place. They weren't just after the money. They wanted control of me. And my husband? I asked. She didn't hesitate. He was positioned as a stabilizing influence. Cooperative. Reasonable. She paused. A witness against you. I closed my eyes. The pain came later. Right then there was only focus. What do? I asked. You stop reacting, she said. And you start planning. That afternoon I moved fast. Quietly. I transferred assets into accounts my parents couldn't touch. I changed passwords. I revoked shared access. I followed my lawyer's instructions carefully, methodically, like my life depended on it. Because it did. I didn't explain myself. I didn't warn anyone. I cut communication without a single goodbye. My parents noticed within hours. My mother left 14 missed calls. Then messages. Then voice notes. Her tone shifted with each one. Concern. Confusion. Anger. Panic. Why won't you answer? We're worried about you. You're making a terrible mistake. By evening, my father called. Straight to the point. You think you're being clever, he said. You're not. I hung up. Daniel was next. He showed up at the lawyer's office unannounced. Eyes red, voice soft. Please, he said. Let's talk. I didn't let him inside. I can explain everything, he said through the glass. I was trying to protect us. There is no us, I replied. He pressed his forehead against the door. They're panicking, he said. Your parents. They're scared. Good. The begging didn't last long. By the third day, his messages changed. You're hurting people. You're being selfish. This will get ugly. That night, he called and didn't bother lowering his voice. You don't understand how much power they have, he said. You're not untouchable. I felt my hands shake for the first time. Not from fear. From anger. You chose them, I said. And now you're choosing threats. Silence stretched between us. I don't want to hurt you, he finally said. But they won't stop. I ended the call. Sleep became impossible. I replayed every conversation, every smile, every lie. Money didn't change people. Strip them bare. My parents tried another angle. Doctors, emails, legal notices filled with concern for my mental state. Each one went straight to my lawyer. They're escalating, she said. But they're running out of time. Are they dangerous? I asked quietly. She studied me for a long moment. Desperate people can be. The truth settled heavy in my chest. I had underestimated how far they were willing to go, and how much they believed I owed them. On the fifth day, my mother showed up where I was staying. Her face was pale, her eyes wild. You're destroying us, she cried. We're your parents. I didn't open the door. You taught me to protect myself, I said through it. I'm finally listening. She screamed then. Not in grief. In rage. That was when I understood. They never saw me as a daughter. I was an asset. And assets aren't allowed to walk away. When she left, I sat on the floor and cried for the first time. Not for the money. For the family I never really had. Later that night, my lawyer called. Her voice was low. Urgent. They've got one final move left, she said. And if they use it, everything changes. I didn't run to the police. I didn't scream or beg. I found a lawyer. Someone my parents didn't know. Not one from their polished social circle. Not someone who owed them favors. A name whispered to me by a friend I hadn't told anything to, not directly at least. The office was plain. No gold plaques. No family portraits. Just a quiet woman with sharp eyes and sharper instincts. Her name was Marion. I handed her the envelope with shaking hands. Please, I whispered. Tell me I'm wrong. She said nothing for a long time, flipping through the pages. Her silence was louder than a scream. Then she took a deep breath. You're not wrong, she said softly. You're in danger. Every word she said after that fell like a gavel. They were preparing to have me declared legally incompetent. It sounded insane, like something from a movie. But there it was in black and white. Letters. Signed agreements. A shadowy paper trail of manipulation wrapped in legal language. They weren't just coming for the money anymore. They were coming for me. If they succeeded, I would lose control of everything. Not just the money. My home. My name. My voice. They'll say you're unstable, Marion explained. Emotional. Impulsive. They'll use your reactions as proof. That's why you can't react anymore. Her words lit something inside me. I stopped being afraid. I started being strategic. That same night, I moved my remaining assets, quietly, carefully, into an account only I could access. I changed the passwords on everything. I revoked Daniel's access to our shared finances. I contacted the bank and added a legal flag for any suspicious activity. I cut off communication without explanation. No texts. No calls. Not even a warning. The silence panicked them. I saw it in their responses. My mother sent a flurry of voicemails, her tone swinging from sweet concern to shrill desperation. Emma, sweetheart, what are you doing? Emma, don't make this harder than it has to be. And then finally cold. You're making a mistake you'll regret. My father left just one message. I hope you understand the consequences of isolating yourself. Daniel showed up at my door 2 days later. I didn't let him in. He stood there, suit wrinkled, eyes wide with false concern. Emma, please. Just talk to me. About what? I said through the intercom. The deal you signed behind my back? The meetings you attended without telling me. He didn't deny it. Instead, he pressed his palm against the glass. I did it for us. No, I said. You did it for you. He backed away slowly. But I saw it then, the shift. The exact moment the begging died and the threats took root. I'm your husband, he said. If this gets ugly, don't forget that. It was a warning. A soft one. The first of many. The next day, I got a call from my doctor's office. A routine checkup reminder I hadn't scheduled. Your appointment's at 9 a.m. tomorrow, the receptionist said cheerfully. I didn't book that. Oh, she hesitated. Well, someone did. It's in the system under your insurance. I hung up and called Marion immediately. They're setting a precedent, she said. They want a paper trail to suggest mental decline. Every move was part of their playbook. I started preparing my own. I backed up everything, every voicemail, every call log, every legal document. I documented each strange interaction. I had a locked bag with essentials in case I needed to leave fast. For the first time, I understood why women in stories I used to roll my eyes at, women who overreacted, did what they did. They weren't paranoid. They were surviving. One night Daniel tried again. This time he didn't knock. He used the spare key. I was in the kitchen, phone already recording in my pocket. You can't keep shutting me out, he said. His voice a little louder, a little less gentle. You're being irrational. I changed the locks. That key shouldn't work anymore. He shrugged. Guess you missed one. You need to leave. But he didn't move. He stepped forward, lowering his voice. They're scared, Emma. You're acting unstable. Cutting off communication, hoarding money, recording people. What do you think that looks like? I stared at him. He was right. It looked exactly how they wanted it to. And that's when it hit me, this wasn't just about the money. It was about erasing me. Discrediting me before I could defend myself. So I smiled. I'm fine, I said softly, still recording. You should go. He did. For now. But I could feel it. The air was tightening. The walls were closing in. Days passed in tense silence. And then the message came. An encrypted email from Marion. Subject. Immediate concern. Emma, you need to prepare. There's one final move left they haven't used yet. And it's the one that could bury everything. I need you in my office tomorrow. Urgent. I read it 3 times. Then I read it again. What final move? What hadn't I seen? I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake wondering what was left. What card they were holding behind their back. And how far they were really willing to go. The lawyer warned me they had one final move left. The courtroom was colder than I expected. Not just in temperature but in spirit. Sterile. Controlled. Every sound echoed too loud. Every breath felt measured. I sat at the plaintiff's table beside Marion, my lawyer, fingers curled tightly in my lap. Across from me sat the 3 people who once defined the word family. Now they were strangers wearing tailored lies. My mother dabbed her eyes with a tissue, trembling hands and soft sobs timed like a metronome. My father sat stiff, jaw tight, eyes glassy as though grief had hollowed him. And Daniel, my husband, he wore a gray suit and guiltless expression, as if nothing that happened between us ever mattered. The bailiff called the court to order. My heart pounded so loudly I was afraid others could hear it. Then the performance began. My client, their attorney said, rising with solemnity, is deeply concerned for the well-being of his daughter. This isn't about money. It's about mental health, declining stability, emotional volatility, the sudden paranoia, the isolation. He went on. Each word felt like a needle pressing into my skin. When it was Daniel's turn to speak, I thought I was ready. I wasn't. She changed after the inheritance, he said, tone gentle, composed. She stopped trusting me. She stopped trusting anyone. There were nights she'd stay up pacing, recording conversations. She said we were plotting against her. I was worried. I still am. His voice broke perfectly on cue. I wanted to scream. Instead, I stared at him, forcing my face into stone. If I let a single emotion slip, they'd call it instability. They were all playing their parts. My parents. My husband. Their lawyers. And then it was our turn. Marian stood calmly. "If I may, Your Honor," she said, "we'd like to present audio evidence that directly contradicts the testimonies you've heard today." The judge nodded. The first recording played. It was Daniel's voice. "She's smarter than we thought. Emma's not signing." I watched the room shift. Tension thickened. My father's eyes flickered. My mother stiffened. Daniel blinked once. Then again. The second recording played. It was Daniel again, only this time trying to gaslight me. "They're scared, Emma. You're acting unstable. Recording people. What do you think that looks like?" The third was my favorite. My mother's voice, cold and clear. "She won't give it up willingly. Then we'll take it another way." Silence followed. Marian looked directly at the judge. "These are only a fraction of the recordings. The rest paint an even clearer picture of coercion, conspiracy, and emotional manipulation. My client took precautions not because she is unstable, but because she is being hunted by the people closest to her." I felt the room turn. A few people shifted in their seats. The judge leaned back slightly, folding his hands. "Do you have any medical records to suggest her instability?" he asked the opposing counsel. They fumbled. "She canceled her last appointment," the lawyer said. "Which in itself is not proof," the judge cut in. "Let's stay with facts." For the first time I saw it. Fear. Real fear in my father's eyes. Desperation tightening my mother's lips. Daniel avoided my gaze entirely. But justice doesn't come in a clean sweep. Comes in slow, grinding steps. With each truth revealed, they tried to twist the narrative. They accused Marian of manipulating me. They called the recordings selective. They implied coercion from outside influences. "Your Honor," my mother said suddenly, standing without permission, "she's not the daughter we raised. She's angry. Cold. We just want to help her." "Mrs. Stanton," the judge warned, "you'll sit unless called." She sat, but her words stayed in the air like smoke. They wanted to repaint me as unstable before the evidence buried them. But it was too late for paint. The cracks were visible now. Then the judge turned to Marian. "Do you have any other witnesses?" Marian shook her head. "No further witnesses from our side, Your Honor." He nodded, then adjusted his glasses and turned back to the bench. "I'll need a short recess to review the evidence presented." I exhaled slowly. Progress. Small, steady, terrifying. I stood to leave when he spoke again. "One final witness remains," he said. I froze. He looked down at his notes, then back at me. "Emma Stanton, do you object to the court calling a last-minute witness requested by the opposing counsel?" My heart thudded once. "Who?" I asked. "The name was submitted this morning," the clerk replied. "We were just able to verify their arrival." I looked at Marian. Her brow furrowed. "Do you object?" the judge asked again. I swallowed hard. "No," I said. "I don't object." The judge gave a short nod. "Very well. Bring them in." The door opened, and I forgot how to breathe. The judge asked for one final witness, someone I didn't expect. The courtroom door opened. I turned slowly, not knowing what to expect. My breath caught in my throat. And then I saw him. Mr. Alcott. My grandfather's personal attorney for over 20 years. He walked in with a quiet confidence, a thin stack of files in his hand. His silver hair was neatly combed, his expression unreadable. My father shifted in his seat. My mother's hands froze mid-fidget. Daniel blinked, then looked away. The judge motioned him forward. "State your name for the record." "Thomas Alcott," he said clearly. "I served as the personal legal counsel for the late William Stanton." He turned toward me briefly, and I saw something in his eyes, something I hadn't seen all day. Kindness. "I've been requested to testify today regarding Mr. Stanton's final will, and the reasons behind the direct inheritance to his granddaughter, Emma." I swallowed hard. "I have written permission from Mr. Stanton, given prior to his death, to disclose confidential details should they become legally relevant." The judge nodded. "Proceed." Mr. Alcott opened his folder. "What I'm about to say may be difficult to hear," he began. "But the truth, when buried, always finds its way back." He looked directly at my parents. Mr. Stanton's will was revised 2 years before his passing. That version, his final, was the result of numerous conversations, interviews, and reviews of family history. His decision to leave the entire estate to Emma Stanton was not impulsive. It was deliberate. Protective. He paused. "Protective from what exactly?" Marion asked. Mr. Alcott's jaw tightened. "From cycles of abuse, financial manipulation, emotional neglect." My mother let out a gasp. My father stared forward, unblinking. Mr. Stanton documented concerns about his son's history, evidence of early financial exploitation, coercion, and repeated patterns of emotional cruelty. I blinked, stunned. "Concerns that began when Emma was a child," Mr. Alcott continued. "There were documented accounts of her being used as leverage, requests for her trust fund to be accessed, threats of estrangement if financial demands weren't met." I shook as the memories returned. My birthday parties canceled last minute, the screaming matches, the guilt trips when I chose to visit my grandfather alone. Mr. Alcott pulled out a paper and read directly from it. Quote, "I have watched my son manipulate others his entire life. My greatest mistake was thinking he would change with time. I will not risk Emma becoming another pawn in his endless games." The courtroom fell silent. My mother's face turned pale. My father clenched his fists. Even Daniel looked unsettled now. But Mr. Alcott wasn't done. "Furthermore," he said, lifting a separate envelope, "this is a sealed letter addressed to Emma, written in my presence, stored in my office until today." The judge motioned to accept it into evidence. I took it with trembling hands, tears already blurring the words before I even opened it. "Emma, if you're reading this, then I'm gone, and they're trying to take what's yours. They'll say you're ungrateful. They'll say you're unstable. Don't believe them. You have a strength I've never seen in anyone. You've earned every dollar and every ounce of freedom this inheritance can give you. Use it wisely. Use it to protect yourself. And when it hurts, remember this: what they tried to bury is the truth I died knowing. You are not them. Love, Grandpa." My chest cracked open. The grief hit like a tidal wave. But so did the clarity. This wasn't just about protecting money. He was protecting me. For the first time in this whole ordeal, I felt truly seen. Everything they tried to erase, he'd remembered. Mr. Alcott sat down quietly. The judge looked over his notes, silent for what felt like an hour. Then he finally spoke. "This court finds that there is insufficient and unsubstantiated evidence to declare Emma Stanton legally incompetent. In fact, there is considerable evidence to suggest targeted financial coercion by the petitioning parties." My hands flew to my mouth. My parents didn't move. Daniel's head dropped. In addition, the court recommends a follow-up investigation into the potential misuse of legal processes to exploit or defraud the beneficiary of a private estate. The words rang like church bells in my ears. Marion reached for my hand and gave it a gentle squeeze. I nodded, tears streaming silently. It was over. Or so I thought. Because just as the judge began to close proceedings, a bailiff stepped forward and handed the judge a new envelope. He read it quietly, expression unreadable. Then he looked at me. "This hearing may be concluded, Miss Stanton, but I'm afraid the consequences are not." I felt my spine stiffen. "What consequences?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. The judge didn't answer. He just nodded to Marion. Her face had gone still. She opened the envelope slowly, and I watched the color drain from her cheeks. "Emma," she said carefully, "we need to talk." The verdict was announced, but the consequences weren't over. The courtroom was nearly empty when I stood up. The judge had ruled. The verdict was official. I had won, but it didn't feel like victory. Not the way I thought it would. My parents had been ordered to cease all attempts at claiming my inheritance. Their petition was dismissed with prejudice, meaning they could never file it again. The court sealed the evidence of their manipulation, and the investigation into their legal conduct was already underway. Their masks had slipped. Their reputations were cracked. And yet, as they exited the room in silence, heads down, steps slow, I didn't feel triumphant. Felt still. Daniel was nowhere in sight. He'd left before the gavel fell, unwilling to face the final moment. Our marriage was over. No dramatic goodbye. No slammed doors or shouted accusations. Just silence. And silence can be louder than any scream. Marion squeezed my shoulder gently. You did it. I nodded. I did. But the words didn't settle. Because I hadn't just fought for money. I'd fought for my name. My sanity. My truth. And I hadn't walked away unscarred. Outside, the wind caught my coat as I stepped into the crisp afternoon air. The sun felt unfamiliar. Like I'd spent too long in the dark and wasn't sure how to stand in light anymore. The press was waiting. Cameras. Flashes. Microphones. I ignored them all. My story would be told, but not today. Not by them. Not yet. Instead, I walked down the steps slowly, one breath at a time, feeling the weight lift from my shoulders with each step. Not all at once, but piece by piece. When I got into the car, Marion turned to me. There's still a media frenzy coming, she said. They'll try to spin this. You're going to need protection. Privacy clauses. Maybe even a statement. I nodded again, but my mind was somewhere else. I was thinking about the girl I used to be. The one who wanted everyone to be happy. The one who said yes to keep the peace. The one who thought loyalty was supposed to hurt. She was gone now. Not buried. Transformed. I didn't want revenge. That's what surprised me the most. I thought I'd want them to suffer the way I had. To beg. To cry. To feel powerless. But I didn't. I wanted peace more than punishment. I wanted space more than apologies. So I didn't reach out to them. Not even to gloat. I let the distance become permanent. My father tried once. He sent a letter, full of veiled regret and carefully worded justifications. I didn't read past the second paragraph. My mother sent a message through a mutual acquaintance. Tell her I did what I had to do. She'll understand one day. She was wrong. I understood already. And that was enough. Daniel's lawyer reached out with divorce papers. I signed without hesitation. There was no settlement. No demands. He didn't ask for a dime. Not because he didn't want it, but because he knew he had no claim left to make. He lost his leverage. He lost me. What shocked me was how quiet it was, this ending. I expected it to be louder. I thought freedom would roar. But it whispered. It whispered in the mornings when I woke up without dread. It whispered in the silence of my own home, where no one watched or judged. It whispered in my first laugh in weeks. Real unguarded mine. I took a trip to the mountains 2 weeks later. Alone. No plan. No itinerary. Just me, my journal, and a phone set to do not disturb. I sat by a lake one evening, watching the sky shift into orange and gold, and I thought of my grandfather. His voice came back to me in pieces. You don't owe anyone the version of you they prefer. Sometimes, love is just control dressed in softer clothing. Power doesn't come from money. It comes from knowing when not to use it. He'd left me a fortune, but he'd also left me tools. Truth. Independence. Resilience. And now, with everything stripped away, my marriage, my family, my illusions, I realized something else. I wasn't empty. I was finally full. I rebuilt slowly. New advisors. A new lawyer. A financial strategist who didn't speak in riddles or favors. I hired a security consultant not out of fear, but because preparedness no longer felt like paranoia. I built boundaries. Thick ones. Not walls of bitterness but borders of peace. My home changed too. I painted the walls. Donated furniture. Replaced every gift Daniel had ever given me. I gave away the wedding photos, the matching silver frames, the honeymoon souvenirs that once sat on the shelf. I wasn't erasing the past. I was choosing not to live in it. People began reaching out. Reporters. Distant relatives. Even a few of the concerned family friends who tried to pressure me before. I didn't answer most of them. The money no longer felt like a burden, because I was no longer hiding behind it. I started a foundation 6 months later, quietly, without fanfare. It focused on helping women navigate coercive family control, legal advocacy, emergency funds, trauma recovery. I named it after my grandfather, and I didn't tell anyone it existed, not for a while. Some victories don't need applause. They just need to exist. One morning I found a letter slid under my door. No envelope. Just a single page. Freedom looks good on you. No name. No signature. Just 7 words that made me smile for the first time that day. I don't know who sent it. Maybe someone who saw the truth. Maybe someone who needed to hear it too. Either way, I kept it. I folded it into the last page of my journal, tucked between handwritten thoughts and the letter from my grandfather. Not all inheritances come in billions. Some come in the form of survival, strength, voice, choice. That's what I walked away with. And it was worth everything. But freedom came at a cost. A cost I was only beginning to understand. Freedom came at a cost I was only beginning to understand. People think winning feels loud. Like applause. Like fireworks. But for me it felt like exhaling for the first time in years. I used to live in fear. Of disappointing my parents, of losing my marriage, of not being enough without someone else's approval. I followed rules that were never mine. I gave pieces of myself away in exchange for peace that never lasted. Then everything broke. And through that breaking I found clarity. The money was never just money. It was a mirror. It showed everyone's true reflection, including mine. I saw what people would do to claim what didn't belong to them. But I also saw what I was willing to do to protect myself. I didn't win because of what I inherited. I won because I chose not to disappear. I learned that justice isn't always a sentence handed down. Sometimes it's being believed. Sometimes it's having your truth spoken out loud. And sometimes it's walking away and never looking back. Losing my family, my husband, it hurt more than I'll ever admit. There are days I still look at old photos and wonder if any part of it was real. But I don't live in that pain anymore. I live in choice. In distance. In boundaries that feel like freedom, not punishment. I honored my grandfather not by guarding the money, but by guarding the woman he believed in. The one he saw when no one else did. The one I finally see now too. I started over. My name. My terms. My rules. The inheritance gave me wealth. But the fight gave me worth. And in the quiet of that victory, I finally understood what power really is. It's not control. It's not fear. It's not silence. It's knowing who you are when everything familiar is gone, and choosing to keep going anyway. I didn't just survive them. I outgrew them. That was the cost of freedom. But it was also the reward. And I carry that truth with me now, not as a burden but as a badge. Because I didn't escape with their love. I escaped with myself. And that will always be enough.